My name is Nam Park. My whole Korean name is Nam Yong Park. I was born in North Korea, Hamhung, Korea. That's actually North Korea.
You were born in North Korea?
North Korea. And I was born in March 15, 1931. When I think I was 6 years old, because my father's transfer from bank to South Jeollanam-do, we moved to Mokpo, southwestern corner. I attended Mokpo High School, grammar school. Then in 1950, April 30, I still remember, after I was accepted to attend the Korea University, I left my hometown April 31. And within some 30 days, unfortunately, started Korean War, June the 26th. So my education was suspended due to the war, and I have to spend the next 3 months in Seoul under the occupation of North Korea. The reason why I did not go to my hometown, or I didn't took a refugee to Busan, was that during my high school days, I was the head of what they call chief of the Hogukdan. How are we going to say it in English? The student defense force. And also I was actively involved fighting against the communist movement in Mokpo. So I was afraid of going to the hometown.
Can you tell me a little bit about that and what you had to do?
Actually, before start war, Korean War in June 1949, the first part of 1950, communist movement was very strong in South Korea, particularly after what we call Yeosu Suncheon revolt and Jeju Islands revolt. So in other words, the communist movement was very, very strong in my hometown, particularly Kim Dae-jung, former President Korea's hometown was Mokpo, was not far from my home. I still remember his group attacked one of the police stations, set the fire. When I was involved fighting against the communist movement, I had many occasions to be killed by the communists. So actually I was really afraid of going back to my hometown when communists occupied Seoul. But anyway, at the end of the 3rd month, I was captured by some 50 North Korean soldiers, and I was imprisoned about 27 days in Seoul.
Where were you captured at? You were captured in Seoul?
In Seoul, what they call the prison of the defense, I think was what they call their defense security forces.
How were you captured?
Evidently, every night they are looking for the young man or whoever they think is an anti-communist. And evidently one of the neighbors saw or realized that I was living in my cousin's home. So I assumed they reported. Then one night, at 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 trucks came, surrounded the house. I was hiding in the ceiling. And every night, whenever getting dark, I hide in ceiling or hide underground the daytime because weather hot. When communists start coming and poking with long bayonet, I realized there is no way to survive. Then my mother screamed. Then as soon as the North Korean guards realized
You're in the ceiling.
someone is upstairs, said, we're going to shoot you, just come down. I surrendered. Then that was the beginning of my prison life at the security police.
So you were a prisoner for 27 days.
Yes,
You have-
until the almost week before the United Nations landed in Cheon.
Can you tell me a little bit about while you were a prisoner and your lifestyle and
But because of I was involved as a president of the high school, president of the student defense unit, and also what they call Hangyeon, Korean Student Association. That was a very strong one of the student union, the organization against communist student. So when I was a junior, senior year, we caught a lot of communist student. So I was one of the targeted. Interesting thing was 3 days after the communists occupied Seoul, Korea University, communist student come to my uncle's home to find me, but I notified already to my uncles, whoever comes looking for me, just tell them I went to the hometown. So I'm pretty sure before I reach the hometown, if I went south, I will be arrested, killed. That is a part of the beginning of, first part of the war story.
will you tell me a little bit about while you were a prisoner though? How did they treat you?
This is another hard, memorable. And always whenever I give talk to the church, feeding 1 meal a day. It wasn't rice. Let's see. Republic Korea Training Center #1 sent over there. And during the training period, one of the Korean military advisory group approached me, find out where did you learn English? So I was a college student. I picked up my English at the 25th Division and also 5th U.S. Air Force. Okay, then he explained to me, here in Jeju Island, we have a Korean military advisory group. We need interpreters. And also they have interpreter section in headquarters. So as soon as you finished your training period, we're gonna send you to the, instead of sending front line, we're gonna send you the interpreter section. Then I was attached, immediately assigned to the one of the major as interpreter.
Were you a bit relieved that you weren't going to be on the front lines?
I heard that within 5 days, all my classmates was dead in the front line. So I was so lucky to be able to work and as the interpreter with the PFC. Meantime, so many famous generals like Beng Fritz, Lee Jue, Baek Sun-yeop is coming on the go. And I was translating at the training section. General Park, Baek Sun-yeop, listened to my interpretation, said, why you didn't become applied in interpreters officers unit? So I didn't know it. Okay, you're gonna be an interpreters officer with your quality. And then Korean Military Advisory Group recommended me and went to Daegu. Those days they had adjutant school interpreter school, and the interpreter's school for the 1 month training for officers. From PFC to become a first lieutenant.
Wow.
This
Quite a jump.
is quite a jump
Yeah.
from PFC to the first lieutenant. And so, of course, now recording my enlistment, 3 months or 1 month, the period, Korean sold enlistment's life. Food was so poor, not only that, the amount of the rice and soup, just unthinkable. But whenever Korean military advisory group officers inspect, we can get the whole bowl of the rice and the soup with a bean sprout. That memory still rings my head. How the Korean government treated all our soldiers like, in spite of government issued proper amount of the food. But the interesting thing was that while I was working as a PFC interpreter, English interpreter, I met so many famous American generals. And they are so impressed and said, we have a lot of Korean English interpreter officers with the rank of the first lieutenant. You are PFC. Yes, but luckily, Baek Sun-yeol, after, looks like he just found me and said, you cannot stay here. We're going to make you first lieutenant. Well, don't stay here. Just one word from general, completely changed from PFC to first lieutenant.
Can you tell me how the pay changed from whenever you first decided to join the U.S. military to you getting promoted from PFC to lieutenant? How did the pay change?
Pay scale? Well, of course, when I worked in American unit, those days, I don't know how much I made, but plenty of the money to spend with friends at night. Of course, while I was working in the unit, I had sleeping quarters, good meal 3 days. I can drink coffee in any time, just 24 hours.
Was it Katusa?
No,
No.
the civilian.
Civilian.
Then when I joined the Korean Army, I don't know, maybe $1. I think less than $1, couldn't buy a toothpaste. So those days, most of the enlistment, if you have a connection with family, have a money, parents visit, training center, I got a money. Then when I become officer, I had a officer's quota. Food are completely different in compared to which I used to eat. Officer's meal was about 1,000 times different. Meat in a soup, and of course had kimchi too, and then a couple of side dishes at officer's mess hall. And paycheck was about $20 a month. Then clean uniform. One thing had the freedom, go out every night or come back.
So it was a good raise, good promotion.
Oh, it's a kind of heaven and hell.
Was it in Jeju?
Jeju, and I come to Nonsan.
Nonsan.
And I was at outside Nonsan. So those days,
When was that? When did you go to
1950.
Jeju-do?
Jeju 1951.
51.
Yes.
What was your major mission there in Jeju-do?
Training center.
Training. So you trained the other
No.
Korean?
At the center for the training, basic training.
Oh,
Infantry student.
Oh, I see.
See. Then they found me, but I have to have 1 month those there or 3 months of the training period, then officially become Republic Korea's army. Then I was assigned to the other interpreter. then later officer. So my lifestyle was a completely just changed. So happy.
As an interpreter, what was your main mission? Who did you actually
Okay.
help? What was the main mission?
At
We
the
were-
beginning, in the Korean Army, we had a 500 Korean Military Advisory Group, we call KMAG, Korean Military. All American advisors attached to the all Korean unit. They were the one responsible supplying, even checking how the soldiers got the food, designated amount, so on. Interpreters officers, main in front line, coordinating United Nations Army, particularly when dropped bomb, firing cannons, whatever. And then when during the advancement, retreatment, all interpreter officers acted. They had a great job working. But I was luckily assigned again to number 2 RO, Korean Training Center, Nonsan. Then in the Army, those days, interpreters officer, medical officer, and what they call the lower, what they call it, 법관,
Judge.
judge, elite group. They picked up they are all from their college student or college educated. So particularly interpreter officers were considered one of the elite group. Quite number of the English interpreter officers become adjutant general to general for the general 전속부관.
Were there other many interpreters?
Yes, in Nonsan we had about 18 interpreter officers, so we have an interpreter officers unit. So every day go out with the military advisor and checking, interpreting, training sessions. Then so many American generals, even French, those days with the French war, foreign officers coming to observe training center. So I was translating. Meantime, I met all famous generals like Banfield and so on. Then even I was attached to the general's aide. They would call aide camp in the French word. So I become a general's aide. So my life in the army wasn't bad, and associating with the general, making arrangement or acting as a secretary or so on. Then meantime, 1953, 54, many of the interpreters officers going to the U.S. were abroad. So I did the same way. I applied in U.S. school. 1956, I came to the Davidson College. Then I had a special order by the defense minister, discharge, come to U.S., study abroad. So I was educated at North Carolina, majored in history. Then I did my graduate work, history again, at the University of Houston. I went to Houston was a booming town at the oil. It's 1960. I switched to the geology. And later I become what they call micropaleontologist, specializing fossils. It was actually calcareous nanofossils, specializing calcareous nanofossils. So I become, those days, I was really lucky. Electron microscopes came in 1960. The new field of studying nanofossil, applying to find the oil. I was the first one, Gulf Oil. Hired me and sent me training to the Columbia University, Miami University. In the US, those days only 3 specialized professors. Oil company had enough money. So Gulf Research sent me to personal training from 1-to-1 ratio from professors in order to apply the finding oil. Those days very popular the subject. So I become calcareous nanofossils, specializing. Even later I was assigned the training of South Latin American geologist. So I had a good time working 31 years with Gulf Research Center.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So I settled here, Houston. I was the first one come to the Houston, 1960, with my wife. Those days who was majoring in French. So
Did you meet your wife in Korea?
No, this is another interesting story. Blind date in North Carolina, my senior year. I never met the Korean, about 3 years. And in the South, those days, very hard to find Korean the ladies. At the Davidson College, and they had some winter dance. So fraternity brother made me arrange, you find a Korean god, and then we had a blind date. And finally, 2 years later, we married and settled in Houston. Then I realized that Koreans start coming. So about 5 Koreans get together. We organized Korean American Association. That was the beginning.
Y'all started that?
Yes. So at the beginning, 1961, only 9 or 8 Koreans. Besides, 14 Korean GI married families settled here. They are the one actually really try to help organize the Korean Association, because they are lonely, uneducated ladies. So whoever comes to school, they are the one asking, encouraging, let us organize some Korean organization and get together.
Can you tell the audience some of the differences between the North and South Korean lifestyle? How is it different?
Lifestyle, we've been watching, seeing news, newsletters, news, and now they email. I don't know, in Southern Korea, they can watch North Korean email or not. But I've been receiving a North Korean lifestyle every day. Such poor, just so many hungry people, hungry children. And so many our church in Houston sending, the missionaries and the food. Well, now they suspended too. But, whoever visited, whoever they observed the North Korean lifestyle, we know it. Look at South Korea. Now, left economically, just way up. And whenever I visit Korea, I normally visit once a year. South Koreans are actually well dressed. I think I'm proud of that. Better than America. They're well dressed, and every night go to the bars, karaoke, or they eat good food, enjoy their life. How could the people, forgetting the Korean War and the communist invasion, they are just becoming a pro-communist? I couldn't understand. So, younger people today, they don't know what's going on, seems to me. But Houston, same, older people who have experienced the Korean War are really against the communist movement, pro-communist groups.
You said that you go back to Korea about once every year. Can you tell me about some of the things that you witnessed and how it grew to be as successful as it is today?
When I visit, even 10 years ago, the buildings, the physical, just the buildings, the streets, and the beautification, then all the hospitals, etc. Just modernized and super. This is what word development, Korean development. Then, meantime, for the last 50 years, look at Koreans are well educated at the first class in the universities, colleges. They are dedicating.
You never thought that South Korea would or could ever flourish the way that it did and just expand and grow and rise on top.
But we expect to grow slowly, not like this so rapid time element. Of course, we had a wonderful leadership in Korea. Personally speaking, at the beginning, I opposed when the military took over government, President Park. But he did a wonderful job. He was the one approached the Korean scientist in the US. 1971. He said, please come to the Korea, then observe what we are doing. If you like to work for the Korea, we're going to pay you same scale what you are making. He invited Korean scientists, first time in 1971. 50 Korean scientists, I was one, went to Korea. They're well treated. Then he was begging, please come to your native country, show what you learned, and dedicate for Korea. Then Korean was kissed with Korean science, the organization that's just popping up, and everything's changing. And then President Park, when he made a highway system, then economic situation completely changed. As everybody knows, our incomes average $90 in the 1960s, 70. Now, yesterday when I was reading a Time magazine, our pay scale is almost the same as the USA. It's amazing, huh?
Amazing.
That's a small country.
Do you think it's important for younger generations to understand and know the sacrifices and contributions made during the Korean War?
Yeah, of course, because now younger Koreans are well educated. But then they want to learn too. But they are not the kind of deeply concerned what we have experienced during the 1950 Korean War. So some of the young men, they don't know actually what our generation, have experienced under the communist invasion. So many refugees, the destructions, hunger. Still, I think, when I think of 1950 under the communist occupation, I ate 1 meal a day. Then when United Nations came back from Incheon, such poor people are just begging food. Now young people, as I mentioned before, well-dressed, well-dressed. In every major main street, good food, good music, westernized, hairstyles are unbelievable. The way of dress, girls and boys are different. In a way, I'm happy. Korean living standards are that much. our young generation think of what we have experienced. It's maybe different story. I think we can do it. We're going to achieve. But I like to see before I die, I'm 4 years old. This time is coming. But unfortunately, now a complicated and Korean political situation. We are living in an age of turmoil and uncertainty. But as I'm Christian, I totally believe what God will do for us.